I would like to start with the first one, which is the reviews included in the SWAR focused on interventions. Could LLMs be used for other types of reviews?
So for other types of reviews than systematic reviews, I assume. So I think,
I would say other types of reviews like diagnostic test accuracy
yeah.
reviews, or maybe scoping reviews, like would interpret it like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is a generalizability issue with any workflow validation study, but in general, I think it can be used for any type of evidence synthesis. So often the data items are fairly similar, so we are interested in patient characteristics, in study characteristics, and so on. What we saw also, which I didn't show in the slides, was that accuracy varies a bit between data items. So it's easier for study characteristics, patient characteristics, and a bit harder for outcomes. But I think in general, it can be used for any type of evidence synthesis.
Okay, thanks. Then I continue with the second one. Have you considered using an AI plus AI approach where a second LLM from a different family acts as the second reviewer?
No, I mean, we have thought about it, but we haven't used it. But yeah, it's a great idea. And I think there are just so many different possibilities how AIs could be used. You could also say the humans extract the data and the AI check the work of the humans. I mean, our first study found many mistakes in human data extractions. Yeah, I think this is just it's just a start, but there are many different ways how AI could be used.
Yes. Third one. Did you include the time it took to engineer the prompts in the outcome measurement on time? And then the question was clarified a little bit more. I mean, is it possible the difference in time gained is not so high if you don't count the time you spent in prompt engineering?
Yes, great question. Yes, we did. So the time for prompt engineering is included in these numbers. So there was a pilot phase in the beginning where the two teams that later were blinded and separated. There was a pilot phase where they still worked together on two pilot studies, and during this pilot phase, the AI-assisted team developed the prompts, and they recorded the time it took them to develop the prompt. So the time for the AI-assisted approach is really the entire time they spent on the task.
Great. A lot of questions coming in now. It's very interesting to read all them, and I will try to sort them, and so we can, or you can answer them chronically, more or less. Okay, so the fourth one, AI clearly does well at RCTs. Have you done any testing on observational studies, or are you aware of results from other studies?
Yeah, so our SWAR actually included, I think, 3 reviews that also used non-randomized studies, observational studies. So it was both. We did not stratify accuracy between RCT data and non-randomized data. But what we could see is that overall, these reviews that included both RCTs and non-randomized studies did not do worse than the ones that included just RCTs. But of course, RCTs often are better reported than non-randomized studies. So probably in a review that has mostly observational studies, non-randomized studies, it might be a bit harder for both the humans and the AI to extract data.
Yeah, yeah. I continue with the next one, and it is, I would like to know if the LLM were used to help improving the prompts for extracting the data.
No, the LLM, we did not use the LLM. So the teams with that used Claude, we gave them a prompt data bank, so prompts that we had developed before and that we know they work well, and they could adapt these prompts if they were useful. And we also gave them access to a data scientist who is an expert in prompt engineering. And if they got stuck with a prompt, they could ask the data scientist.
Yeah. Okay, the sixth one is, with regards to prompt engineering, have any automated prompt engineering techniques been used?
So for our study, we did not use automated prompt engineering techniques, but large language models, I think that the other question already hinted on this. They're also really good at help you with engineering prompts, and they revise the prompts, they make the language clearer. And then I showed the one slide of the Anthropic tool where you can put your prompt into this tool, and then the machine behind it checks the prompt and gives you a suggestion of a better and revised prompt. But ultimately, I think testing the prompt and refining the prompt until you really get the output that you would like to have, that really is the essential part. So it's an iterative process of engineering, creating these prompts.
Okay, thank you. Did you identify other biases associated with introducing AI other than fabricated data?
So one thing that we saw, that humans are really not good at doing data extraction. And what we repeatedly saw cases in the semi-automated part where the AI actually extracted the correct data, and then the human changed it, and then it was ultimately not correct. So I think humans are really a weak link in this. Also, in our semi-automated approach, the AI extracted data and the humans checked the data, but still they together as a team missed a lot of available data. There was one bias that we really tried to avoid with the study design, and that is data contamination. So if you use published systematic reviews as a reference standard, it is, for example, Cochrane reviews that are accessible, freely accessible for everyone. It is possible that these reviews were used for training the large language model. And then if you use these reviews to validate the large language model, it could actually remember some of this information and go back and use it. So in our case, these were unpublished systematic reviews, ongoing systematic reviews, where no extracted data on these studies, on the included studies, had been published before.
Yeah, thank you. Next one. Would your conclusions be similar regarding data extraction of data in languages other than English, or for documents like gray literature? What do you think?
For gray literature, probably yes. For other languages, it's really hard. I know it also works. We have not tested it on any of the other languages. I know, at least in German, these large language models actually also work really well in the German language, probably also in Spanish, French, and other major languages, Chinese. But we have not validated it. We have not tested it.
Yes. Okay. And a second, a short question. I hope we can interpret it correctly. Are we worried about publishers making their PDFs unreadable? So this is maybe a little bit beyond the scope, but a question of how do publishers respond to this procedures, and do they maybe want to protect their data somehow?
Yeah, that is a very good question. So we were actually really conscious about publishing and copyright, and we had an intellectual property lawyer involved in this, and he checked the legal language that you have to sign when you get these subscriptions. And Claude, that's why we chose Claude. So Claude was the one that guaranteed you that whatever you upload will not be used for training the machine. So it gets uploaded, and if you have a professional license, it gets deleted afterwards. And that convinced our intellectual property lawyer that there's no infringement of any copyright issues. So the publishers shouldn't be worried too much, hopefully. And of course, it would be totally wrong if they make the PDFs unreadable.
Yes. Yeah. Have you considered comparing the performance of different LLMs in extracting the data from the same PDF and compare the LLMs?
Yeah, we've done one study very, very early on where we compared ChatGPT with Claude. But things changed so quickly. So at that time, and that's not even 2 years ago, at that time, the context window of ChatGPT was still really small. So we had to parse the PDFs because a single PDF was too large to upload. And at that time, Claude outperformed ChatGPT. But things have changed so quickly. It's such a moving target. Currently, probably these results are not applicable at all anymore. And we've not done it recently, but it also would be really interesting to do.
Yeah. A question connected to this last one would be, did you test tools like SciSpace that also offer data extraction from uploaded PDFs? It's maybe a very specific one, but maybe you can comment on that.
No, we have not. We have not. And I think SciSpace, or specifically the systematic review platforms, and there are several, and they're all developing data extraction tools. And I'm sure some are on today. It is really important. Please publish the validation studies. It is really important for us systematic reviewers that these tools really work. So if you conduct systematic reviews for clients and you say you use AI, they are usually skeptical. But if you have the studies to back up the decision, and if you can show that they have been validated, then it makes it much easier. But as reviewers, we really want to see the validation studies that these tools work.
Another very interesting one, I think, is, can we assume that the performance of LLMs for data extraction will maintain a long time? For example, repeating the same data extraction 1 year later. It's about reproducibility.
Yeah. I don't think we can say this because they evolve so quickly, and a year really seems to be a very long time in the development of these large language models. What we did with the first study, we conducted exactly the same data extractions with exactly the same prompts and the same data items 4 weeks later to see how reproducible these data extractions are. And the error rate was about the same. The accuracy was about the same. And I told you it made 6 mistakes. So there was still around a 3% error rate, but The interesting part was that the errors occurred mostly in different data items. So it was not the same data items anymore that it missed, it was others, and which also kind of illustrates the stochastic element of these large language models. So they are not deterministic, always doing the same. There's some randomness always in them. And yeah, overall the same error rate, but different errors, which we thought was actually really interesting.
Yeah. Now maybe a specific one also. Does nested knowledge software also come under LLM? You heard of this expression, nested knowledge software?
So nested knowledge is a systematic review platform that you can use, like Covidence, Distiller, Laser AI, others. And I think they're also working on a tool for semi-automated data extraction, but I don't know what they use, whether they use a large language model or a more traditional model in the background. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. A technical one. Were all the PDFs digitized or were any of them scanned PDFs? How did LLMs perform with scanned PDFs?
Yeah. No, we did not have any scanned PDFs. So yeah, no, if they're not readable for the machine, then probably they cannot extract anything.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think high impact factor journals are currently ready to give credit to systematic reviews with AI-assisted data extraction?
I hope so. I mean, it's hard to gauge, but I hope so. If we can cite the studies that show that this works, and I think this evidence is evolving and is getting generated. But yeah, I in general I think so. I think that is the way the future of evidence synthesis will go. There will be more and more AI use.
Yeah, yeah. I continue. Since these LLMs have not been validated fully for systematic reviews, does this mean they can not be fully incorporated into our own approaches for performing meta-analysis for reviews? Is providing a small proof of concept validation for the approach within the review sufficient?
Yeah. So regarding the second part of the question, I think ideally it always needs a workflow validation, and also that's sort of the call to everyone, all you systematic reviewers. That would be you. So you would have to do the workflow validations. That's not the technicians who develop these tools, also not the providers. The workflow validation, that is really a task that we as systematic reviewers have to do. And the more workflow validations we have, the more solid the evidence then is. And I know Cochrane is working on a statement about the use of AI and the circumstances when AI would be acceptable for Cochrane.
Yes, yes. What sample size, so number of reviews, primary articles, data points, do you recommend for an evaluation study like this one you presented, the SWAR?
So what we did sample size calculations, and we knew the approximate, we knew the effect estimates from the validation studies, and we used those as sort of a basis for the sample size calculations, and then we just we looked at how many data items we will need to make the confidence interval narrow enough so that even under if the results would be at the lower end of the confidence interval, that this would still show that these large language models are accurate enough. So that's how we approached it. So it was the Klopper-Pearson that we used Klopper-Pearson to calculate the confidence intervals. It's hard to say. It's really it depends on yeah. It's hard to say. I think we used the validation. We used I think we used 89% accuracy from the validation studies, and then went from there with the sample size calculations. But the 9,300 really way exceeded the sample size calculations. So we had many more data elements than we would have actually needed. I can't really recall how many we calculated, but 9,300 is a lot and far exceeded the necessary sample size.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of when the results of the study will be published?
No, unfortunately not. We have submitted it, and we wanted to publish it as a preprint, but as you all know, there's the Trump administration in the US, so this was publicly funded, and they did not allow us to put it on a preprint server. So now we have to wait that it gets accepted in a peer-reviewed journal, and it's under peer review. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah. And regarding the LLM-based extraction accuracy, do you think performing extractions on different days will impact the accuracy? It's another
on different
another one on
days, like on different weekdays. I don't know. I wouldn't know why it would. I mean, it as I said, there is a stochastic random element in all of this, so it will not produce exactly the same results on Monday that you had on Friday. But overall, I think it should be very similar.
Yes. Will the prompt data bank be publicly available when you publish the study? And how created the prompts did the team who did that have any specific training or skills?
So to address the first one first, so the prompts that the systematic reviewers used will be published as a supplemental material. But there's sort of one caveat. Looking at them now afterwards, some were really not well done, but still the output was quite good. The prompts that we used in the first study, they have also been published in an appendix of the paper. And sorry, and I forgot the second part.
And the second one was about creating the prompts. Did the team who did that had any specific training skills?
So we gave them a 1 hour basic training on prompt engineering. So pretty much telling them what I presented in my presentation here, showing them some examples, but that it was not like an extensive training. It's not difficult. Prompt engineering is not rocket science. It's very easy to pick it up if you look at some examples, if you play around with it a bit and see what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, maybe we have time for 1 or 2 additional questions. I start with the first. Have you always used single prompts, or were there multiple prompts? Like, are you sure? Can you check that again? Or if there was something suspicious? Could you tell a little bit on the structure?
So when in the SWAR, the teams in the SWAR, I don't think they did that. We just told them, this is how you have to create prompts. Do it as you would do it in real life. So we wanted to make sure it's sort of pragmatic. When we did it, especially for the validation study, we communicated a lot with the machine also to sort of understand how this works and how it thinks. And I gave the one example with the proportion of females, which really surprised us how well it could extract it when the proportion of males were reported. And so it always gave us a very clear answer about the rationale that is behind it, which is really interesting, and also it helps you design better prompts when you kind of understand how the machine thinks.